All right. Good evening, baseball fans. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network. Mike Guido, Dalton Brown, the only exclusive baseball podcast on the Grid Network. Again, we are ready to go. It's postseason time. Finally, the regular season has officially concluded as of about an hour ago or so. With regardless of whether or not of how we feel about the outcome, maybe one of the craziest games all year. But Dalton, how are we feeling, my friend? It is postseason time. We are ready to go starting tomorrow.
Yeah, stressed, excited, amazed by today. Wild day for the last game there or I guess the second to last game really was the wild one between the Mets and the Braves. A lot to talk about. Really a lot to talk about. From the passing of Pete Rose to changes in front offices. We don't have to get too deep into every single subject. I think mostly we want to focus on the postseason. But tonight's one of those nights, Mike, where if we wanted to, we could talk for 3 hours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We could go on, I'm sure, forever. But yes, I think it would do us justice to touch on this first. Pete Rose, the all-time hit leader in Major League history, has passed away at 83 years old. That broke, 20 minutes ago or so. Literally just now. So a sad day in baseball, I think. And I've always said this. I always felt that Pete Rose deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. I understand that, the whole integrity of the game thing when it came to gambling and everything like that. I understood all that. But one of the things that I was hoping was that they would let Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame before he died. Now that's no longer an option. So, Dalton, I have my own quote here from Pete Rose that I'd like to share with everybody. But first, I want to give you kind of a stage here to talk about the great Pete Rose.
To be honest with you, Mike, I think you should take the stage first with the quote that you have, because to be perfectly frank, I'm not one who is that desperate to eulogize Pete Rose. Obviously, unbelievable baseball player. The hit king, really special individual as far as playing baseball. But I don't think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I think that what he did was pretty despicable and pretty well outlined that it was going to get him kicked out of the game. So to me, the Pete Rose situation is one where it's like, well, it kind of should be a lesson to people to take that stuff seriously and not gamble on the sport. So, that being said, like, obviously his legacy as a baseball player is unbelievable. His legacy as a person, I haven't heard very many positive things about Pete Rose as a human being. So, rest in peace. Don't mean to speak ill on the dead. All-time hit leader. We lost an amazing ball player, but I don't have a ton of positive things to say about Pete Rose, the person, just being super transparent.
Well, I'll say this. I have not met Pete Rose to the extent of which I'm sure most people have. I've had one interaction with him personally. I did see him in Cooperstown. I was upstate for Derek Jeter's enshrinement into the Hall of Fame, and Pete Rose was signing autographs at one of the local stores down there. I think, and again, and I guess this is where you and I differ, Dalton. Is just like Pete Rose to me, like, I think I almost felt bad for the guy because there were legends everywhere, all over town. John Smoltz, Goose Gossage was out there. Raleigh Fingers was out there. Orlando Cepeda was out there. Like, it just like some of the most like iconic names in baseball history that you've seen. Reggie Jackson, all of those guys. And their lines were out the door for autographs, out the door. Pete Rose's was empty. I went around the back. I got an autograph from Pete Rose, and I could have went right around and gotten another one right after that. Like, it was unbelievably short. And the interaction that I had with him was positive. He was encouraging me to take a picture. The one of the things he made an incredibly funny joke about I was wearing cargo shorts and he was saying that my dick was too big to wear regular pants. I had to wear cargo shorts. So I apologize for using that language, but I don't know. I appreciated it. It was in front of my wife and everything. Like, it was funny. But I will say this. One of the things that I appreciated about it is that I have a picture here of Pete Rose on my desk, and it has a quote underneath it, and it's mine and my dad's, maybe one of our favorite sports quotes of all time, and then we can move on. And he says, "I'm just like everybody else. I have 2 arms, 2 legs, and 4,000 hits." So I could appreciate that sort of raw sense of humor. So again, rest in peace to Pete Rose, one of the all-time greats in Major League Baseball. Regardless of whether you think the guy deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or not, it is undeniable the kind of player he was and the kind of lasting impression that he had on Major League Baseball as a player. Okay, so as we move on to another kind of quick hitter story, Farhan Zaidi got fired by the San Francisco Giants. Buster Posey is now taking over as the president of baseball operations for the Giants. Sort of an interesting move. When I saw that this morning, I was really interested to be like, well, it didn't seem like the effort wasn't there. Signing Blake Snell this offseason, signing Matt Chapman, like obviously things didn't go as well for the Giants this year as, maybe they had planned. But I never looked at this roster and was just like, this is like a hardcore, like for sure postseason roster. This is a division that's pretty tough. You've got 3 teams in front of them that I think you could almost conclusively say are better than them. So this was kind of an interesting move, Dalton. What did you make of this?
I think what a lot of it comes down to is, like, have the Giants gotten better since he arrived? Mm-hmm. I don't really think they have. Like, there was the 1 year in 2021 where they went on like a Linsanity run and won 107 games and then immediately flamed out against the Dodgers in the NLCS. And I think everybody that season, at least most people, had the impression of like, well, they're going to have to do this again next year to prove that this is real.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it the next year or the year after or the year after. And so I think, he was given time to build a winner there. He wasn't able to do so. I don't think it means that he's some horrible GM. Obviously he cut his teeth with the Dodgers and, he cut his teeth with Friedman. And I think that there's a lot of cachet that goes with that. And I can understand why the Giants would want to give that guy a shot. Mm-hmm. It just didn't work. And, there's a lot that you can point to. I think ultimately the biggest problem for the Giants is that they lost out on the biggest names that they were going after. Like, you think of the biggest names that the Giants have pursued in the last several years. Aaron Judge is from Fresno, right? That's not the Bay Area, but that's semi-Northern California, a few hours away, right? That's a guy that they thought they had a chance to land. They were in on Shohei Ohtani. They thought they had signed Carlos Correa. You just look at the moves that the Giants have attempted to make the last few years, and then the moves that they've settled for, that most of which haven't worked out all that well. Even the Jung-Hoo Lee thing, like, you can't blame the Giants for health, but at the end of the day, the Giants spent a lot of money this offseason to get better and didn't get better. So, it's unfortunate. Some of it is bad luck. Like, that's just the reality of it. Yeah. He could have made those exact same moves and had it go a lot better, but baseball's tough and it's a results-oriented game. Ultimately, he didn't produce enough results there. And, I also think that from a fan buy-in perspective, the Giants quietly have been kind of struggling with like engagement with their fan base. Mm-hmm. There's been this very stagnant feeling around it there. And I think bringing in Buster Posey to head the organization, at least in theory, reinvigorates that. So I understand why they're doing what they're doing. I think Farhan Zaidi will get another job somewhere else and has every opportunity to be successful. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a really good point about reinvigorating the fan base when it comes to Buster Posey. That itself, I mean, he's loved within San Francisco. At least you would think he would. At least you would think he is. For the amount of the number of great years that he gave them, regardless of his lack of front office experience or, whatever, but, Buster's taking over. We're going to get rolling now. So we'll see how that all unfolds as well. Okay, so as we do every show, I know that we kind of didn't do it this time, but we had some other stuff to kind of take care of early on. We do have rants for today. Again, postseason is here, so let's get to it. We cater to our own fan bases. Sorry, not sorry. Yankees, Dodgers. Here we go. Okay, Dalton, I'm pretty happy. You and I think, should both be at least relatively. Well, maybe you, maybe not you. We'll see in a few minutes. But I'm pretty happy. Both of our teams ended up with the number 1 seed overall in our respective leagues, so I think that that's something to applaud about. But the way the Yankees ended the season was very like not anything to write home about. I like the fact that they put together, like a big stormy win against Baltimore to end that Baltimore series. I like that they won their last game against Pittsburgh, avoiding being swept. But okay, this week was not necessarily all that great. So I wish it was a little bit more, a little bit more fireworky to close the season out. But I mean, as far as rankings go, they finished as one of the top teams in the American League in almost every offensive category. I feel good about that. I will say this though about the Pirates. I texted you after Paul Skeens threw 2 innings against the Yankees. I don't know that I would take any pitcher in baseball at this very moment over Paul Skeens right now. That dude is disgusting. He's disgusting. And we saw Jared Jones the game before that, and I can say that kid's got quite the future as well. The kid throws 100. And I mean, he's pretty much Paul Skeens light. It's unbelievable. So I'm interested to see how the Yankees will fare in the postseason. Generally speaking, a lot of speculation, a lot of skepticism has come with the Yankees in the postseason when it comes to their fan base. I will say, I think that you have guys in this Yankee lineup that know how to perform in the postseason. I mean, Gleyber Torres is a much better player in the playoffs than he has been in the regular season over the course of his career. Giancarlo Stanton, I don't even need to Giancarlo Stanton's OPS is like 960 in the postseason over the course of his career. So we have guys that I think are going to perform at the postseason level. We'll see how the young guys kind of embrace the playoffs. Anthony Volpe, if he can jump up on the big stage. Austin Wells, same deal. And the other thing that I'm kind of keeping an eye on is if the starting pitching can hold up, right? Obviously, that is everything when it comes into the postseason. You need innings. Garrett Cole, I'm pretty sure, is going to lock things down. What are we going to get out of Carlos Rodon? What are we going to get out of Luis Gil? What are we going to get out of Clark Schmidt? Because I think he'll probably be a Game 4 starter in a 7-game series. What are we going to get out of those guys? What will we get out of the bullpen? Who's going to be closing games? Is it going to be Luke Weaver? Is it going to be a committee of guys? So there are questions to be asked about the Yankees right now, but right now I'm feeling okay. I think that this is a roster that can compete with virtually every team in the American League. And if you look at the American League as a whole, it isn't like anybody else is knocking anybody's socks off either. I think the AL side of the bracket is much easier than the NL side at the moment. So I'm okay with the Yankees right now. Oh, Dalton, you're muted.
I am. Now I'm not muted. I think the most important thing that you mentioned there is the bracket difference between the AL and the NL. And I want to comment on that from an AL perspective first. Like, you look at the Yankees' path, and the nice thing for them is they're going to play either a Baltimore team that sputtered the last several months of the season or a Kansas City team that sputtered down the stretch of the season. Like, either way, they're playing a team that's not coming into the postseason hot. Now, those are two teams that have a lot of young talent. They've got some good young pitching, but the Yankees are and should be a solid favorite in the ALDS, and that's really all you can ask for because it's hard to project much of anything beyond the ALDS. I think the Yankees are in a great position, right? They've got home field advantage all the way through the AL playoffs. Cleveland is a team that I think I'll talk about Cleveland as we go along. Cleveland scares me a little bit in the AL, to be honest. Like they feel like a team that, especially if Detroit with their pitching in a short series can cause the Astros problems. If Cleveland rolls into a series with you with that bullpen, like you better keep them off the board. But in general, I think the Yankees have the clearest path of really any team in baseball to the World Series. I think you can genuinely make that argument. So whether they get there or not, like this is baseball, man. Like, people, I think people forget how different baseball is from every other sport once you get to the postseason. Like for example, Tigers, Astros. People think of the Astros as like this big bad team that always wins in the postseason, and that very well might play out this year again. But the reality is the Tigers are hot. And if the Tigers come out and just play good baseball for 2 days, the Astros season is over. Like this is a finicky sport. They're like if you're looking at what you think is the most lopsided series on paper, I promise you there is a 40% chance it goes the other way you're not thinking. That's just, so it's a crapshoot at the end of the day, but you hope for the best path possible. Transitioning from the Yankees over to the Dodgers, I couldn't feel less that way about the Dodgers. I think it's utter horse hockey that a team can win 98 games, finish with the best record in baseball, and probably face the next best team in baseball, if we want to say it that way, in San Diego in the NLDS. Like, I think that's the reality of where these teams are right now. I have said this before, probably on this show. I've said it in countless places, though, that I think after the wild card round, the teams that got the bye, the top seed should get to pick which winner they want to play. I think it would make for great television. I think it would make for great bulletin board material. And I think it would make that top seed worth fighting for, which right now it's not. Like, neither the Phillies nor the Dodgers really wanted it. Philly lost a couple more games down the stretch than the Dodgers did. So Philly got the advantageous position of being the 2 seed. So that's frustrating as a Dodger fan, because I would much rather play the winner of the Mets and Brewers than the winner of the Braves and Padres, especially because I'd be pretty surprised if the winner of Braves and Padres wasn't the Padres. Chris Sale's injury playing a big part in that. Now, speaking about the Dodgers generally, you've heard me say it. They're going to have to hit the cover off the ball to do anything this postseason. Flaherty and Yamamoto are both solid starting pitchers. I don't think either one of them are like ideal playoff number ones. Yamamoto is still kind of working his way back and has looked good at times, great at times, shaky at times. Flaherty's been mostly good, but he's not a guy that's going to like blow you away with his stuff. So the reality is we're going to need to score runs in bunches. We're going to need our bullpen to like find a way to get out of innings and get through innings. And we're going to have to piece it together. San Diego's a team that comes in kind of in the opposite position. They've got a really well put together rotation, an excellent bullpen, a really good lineup. They're built to win in October. So I will give the Dodgers this. I am very encouraged by last week's series against San Diego. As you heard on the show, I came into that series thinking I'd be happy if we won one. To take 2 out of 3 and be a triple play away from sweeping that series when you were trailing in all 3 games late and you hit their bullpen in all 3 games, that says something to me about where the Dodgers are right now. Like, we hit Tanner Scott a couple times. Like, we hit Robert Suarez when we needed to. If that's a sign of things to come, then maybe we're in better shape than I thought. But you'll hear me say it throughout. The big concern for the Dodgers is the guy in the dugout, and can he make the right decisions when he needs to? I don't believe that he can, and we'll talk about my predictions as we go along. But I'm not very confident in the Dodgers advancing very far here because I think they're too reliant on their hitting, and I think hitting comes and goes game to game.
Yep. No, I think that's true. I mean, I've sung my praises about the Dodgers. The Dodgers actually, I don't know how much merit this has. I don't know if it's just a rumor, if it's an actual report, but it looked like the Dodgers kind of released their playoff rotation already
Yeah, they did.
It's Flaherty, Yamamoto, Walker Buehler, Landon Knack is their playoff rotation. I mean, just kind of breaking that down. I mean, how do you feel about that right now?
I mean, I don't know what else it could have possibly been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Buehler and Yamamoto are the obvious 1 and 2 with Tyler Glass now not healthy, and I can name 5 other guys that aren't healthy, right?
Yeah.
Buehler has at times looked like he's figuring it out. At times looked like he's super far from figuring it out, but he's been our 3rd best starter. So that's who it's going to be. I'll give Buehler this. He tends to step up in big spots. Like, he pitched really well against San Diego last week. So roll the dice, see how that goes. Landon Knack, I think you're just hoping for 5 and dive and keep us in the game. Like, if Landon Knack can go out there and pitch 5 innings and give up 2 or 3 runs, I think that's what you're looking for. And that's something that he's been able to pretty consistently do this year. He's given up 2 or fewer runs in 10 of his 14 starts. So all in all, like, it is what it is, man. Like, it's not great, but you got 4 different guys that can potentially get you 5 good innings. And if they each get you 5 good innings, you're going to have a shot if you can hit the ball.
Yeah. I feel like you need, like, I feel like the stress for a playoff rotation needing to be 4 deep is a little bit overblown, because the guy in your 4 is going to pitch 1 game. The guy in that 4 spot is literally going to start 1 game in the entire postseason, right? Yeah. Like, unless you're going to the World Series and it's going deep, like, the guy's probably going to pitch 1 game. So if you can get Landon Knack to, like you said, give you 4 2/3, right, of 2-run baseball, keep you in the game. He just needs to not pitch you out of the game, right? What you really need is a solid 1, 2, 3, because those guys are going to pitch multiple times in a series. So,
and I'll say this as well from a strategic perspective for the Dodgers, and I don't remember the order that they put them out in. Did you hear Flaherty going in game 1? I'm hoping.
I think it was Flaherty, Yamamoto, Buehler, Knack.
Okay. Flaherty needs to go in game 1. And the reason for that is Yamamoto is a guy that, like, he's used to pitching on 5, 6, 7 days rest in Japan. Mm-hmm. And whoever goes in game 1 is somebody that in an emergency we might need to bring in a game 4.
Right.
And Yamamoto's not going to be that guy, especially not coming back from an injury. So I am glad to hear that Flaherty is who they're going with in game 1. I think it's the only choice that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't quote me on it, but I think I think that's who it is. Like, I don't, from what I remember, I think that's what they said. Okay. So time to break it down. So here we go. Here's the playoff bracket. This is MLB's. This is courtesy of MLB. So this is what we're looking at right now. Obviously, the American League on the left side, the National League on the right side. This is after today's games between the Braves and the Mets, which, like I said, might I say, I mean, the second game was way less, climactic than the first one. The first game, it was a 3-0 Braves lead heading into the 8th. You then had the Mets score 6 in the top of the 8th. The Mets then surrender 4 to the Braves in the bottom of the 8th. So it is now 7-6 Braves. And then Frankie Lindor in the 9th hits a 2-run homer to put the Mets on top, and the Mets hold the lead and lock their spot into the playoffs. So let's do this, Dalton. Let's go. Okay. We probably should have discussed this pre-show, but why the hell not? We're here for raw reaction, right? Are we going round by round, or are we doing league by league? How do you want to do this?
So I think we should go round by round, and okay. I think it's worth us spending a minute or 2 on each wild card matchup.
Okay,
just kind of talking through expectations for it and who we think is going to win it. I want to make one comment before we get into this, and yep. You made me think of it by bringing up that Mets-Braves doubleheader today. Because I think it's a good example of what drives me insane in the postseason and where I think teams can win or lose games in the postseason. In the bottom of the 9th inning of that first game today, Edwin Diaz heads back out for the Mets after surrendering the lead in the bottom of the 8th. And the Mets made the decision of, hey, we're going to burn Edwin Diaz right here because we want to win this game right here. We're willing to burn him from game 2, burn him probably from tomorrow, maybe even the next day. Matt Olson comes up to lead off the bottom of the 9th for Atlanta. You're down a run. Edwin Diaz struggled with command. He was walking people in the 8th. Struggled with command, threw a bunch of pitches, comes into the dugout. He's in the dugout for a little while the Mets score 2 runs and take back the lead. Matt Olson then comes out and swings at the first pitch, which was inside off the plate. You're going to hear me talk at random times this postseason, especially when it comes to the Dodgers, about hitting approach and about how, like, part of how you win in the postseason is you don't let the game speed up on you, right? You take a thoughtful approach to each at bat. You read what's happening in the game and you react to it effectively, right? If I'm the Braves hitting coach's manager in that spot, I'm telling my guys, hey, we're taking a strike. Like, there is no reason to bail Edwin Diaz out by swinging first pitch and rolling over a pop-up the way Matt Olson did to start that inning, especially with Matt Olson being the best hitter you have at this point in time as far as power potential. Yeah. To me, that was just really disappointing to see. And it was one of those little moments that, like, there was almost some PTSD for it with me. Especially like thinking of the Dodgers facing Blake Snell, the Padres in 2022, Snell struggling with command. You get into the 4th or 5th inning, you've worked up his pitch count a little bit, but you're not really hitting him yet. And you're swinging early in counts. And it's like, guys, like, read the pitcher. If the guy's out there struggling to throw strikes, make him prove that he's going to throw you strikes. This is the postseason. Like, buttholes get tight in a hurry. The game speeds up on guys in a hurry. If the game is starting to speed up on your opponent, do not bail them out.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to bring up that at bat because it was something that when I watched it today, it really stuck with me. Like, and look, I wasn't like rooting super hard for Atlanta, but I was rooting for Atlanta.
It's one thing that we glorify on this show is ribbing the Mets. But look, I agree. It is certainly, and I don't think it's something that you can necessarily disagree with. Just knowing baseball just as a sport, if the pitcher is struggling with command, it's in your best interest to prove that he can throw strikes, especially in a big moment. Because again, I mean, I'd imagine that this happens at the big league level also, but you're just like, if you're walking guys, you're just way more susceptible to making a mistake, right? When that strike does come, you're going to hang a breaking ball. You're going to groove a fastball that's belt high, middle away. Like, that's 100% right. That's 100% right. So yes. So look, and it's honestly surprising to see that coming from, the player of the caliber of player that Matt Olson is. So and listen, and believe me, I'm one of those guys that's like, listen, if you see a pitch that you can hit it, but situational baseball is still kind of a thing, so, I just poor decision making, from that perspective. Okay. Let's go round by round. The MLB postseason. Let's start in the American League. We'll work left to right. So the Detroit Tigers, the 6th seed, are facing the Houston Astros, the 3 in the American League wild card. Dalton, this is an interesting series. The Tigers who are unbelievably hot. I think it was on August 2nd or something like that. They had a 0.7% chance of making the playoffs. And by the time that it came around to about the middle of September, it was getting up closer to 90%. The Tigers went on an absolute tear to close out the season. It's a young team. The Astros, who started off poorly, they obviously then headed up the American League West as everybody predicted, taking over the Seattle Mariners as they started to plummet. So the Tigers and Astros in Houston, what do you make of this series?
It's going to sound a lot like what I said before that Braves Mets series that ended up being played a little bit differently than I think we were expecting, right? I mean, you and I talked about that series last week being 3 straight nights, but I think so much of this series is simply going to come down to game one. And it's Framber Valdez and it's Tarek Skubal tomorrow afternoon. I think the whole series lies in that game because if Detroit can win behind Skubal, they can find a way to beat one of the Astros' other two starters. I feel very confident in that.
Yeah.
But if Detroit can't win behind Skubal, they're in big trouble. Like they don't I don't think they have enough pitching to like survive and win two in a row after that game is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm confident that Detroit can salvage a split in the last two. I'm not confident that they can win two if they lose the first one. And I know it sounds kind of overly simplistic, but it really does to me all lie on game one with Tarek Skubal. If he can pitch well and Detroit can win that first one and they can apply pressure on Houston, I think Detroit has a great chance to win this series. I think Detroit especially has a good chance in this series because of how they've played lately. Like this is a team that they're kind of too young to realize like that they might be in over their heads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to play to their advantage here a little bit against an Astros team that is really seasoned, an Astros team that if they get through Detroit, I think can really make some waves in the AL. But man, I kind of feel like Detroit could sneak up on them here. I think I'm going to pick Detroit to win this series, believe it or not, Mike.
Here's the thing is I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think that like realistically, Detroit is one of those teams that I think could like they're just like in the right spot at the right time. Like and what you say about the series kind of lying on the first game, I think it's 100% right. If Detroit can ride Tarek Skubal to a game one win, and you force Houston to have to win two straight against a team that's playing as well as the Tigers are, I think that's a lot to ask. And again, we're talking about a team that is like I think more prepared for the postseason than maybe people anticipate, right? And I think I have a little bit more faith in their pitching than most people. I just kind of get the feeling that guys like Reese Olson, guys like Cater Montero are going to be able to give them really solid innings in postseason games. And Tarek Skubal, I think, has a chance to be, and again, like we haven't seen Tarek Skubal in a postseason yet, but I think it's possible that we get the Tigers using Tarek Skubal, kind of like how the Giants used to use Madison Bumgarner. Like, I think we're kind of like they are going to ride him all the way to the World Series if that's what they have to do. They'll throw him 110 innings in this post. I'm exaggerating, but they will throw him until his arm falls off if they feel like they have a shot at this. At least that's that's the kind of the feeling that I get. Now, obviously, this is a very, very young roster. This is a team that, like nobody predicted was going to end up in the postseason, or at least very, very few did, right? I just kind of, I get a feeling that Detroit is going to be in this. I think Houston is a little too experienced, however. Like that's kind of where I'm getting at is I think this is an Astros team that's been here before. They're very much not going to be captured by the moment. I think they're going to view this as a step, not even something that they really have to eclipse. They don't view the Tigers, I don't think, as a massive threat. This is just the first step to their World Series run. The Tigers, to me, have a bit of a happy to be here kind of feel. The Astros feel like they belong here. So I think I trust the Astros more than the Tigers. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. But I think you're right. If Tarek Skubal if they can get a good start at a Tarek Skubal, they can ride that win and get a game one win. It's very, very realistic that Detroit wins this series. I'm going to be safe, though. I'm going to be a little bit of a puss, and I'm going to say I think the Astros win. I think the Astros take the series.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Houston's track record, they've played in the ALCS, 7 straight years?
Yeah, right.
So like, who am I to blame you? They don't lose these early series. It just feels like, maybe this is, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm going out on a limb here. But that's kind of what we're here for. Like, look, if you gave me this series at even money and asked me how I was going to bet it, I would bet Houston at even money. But I think Detroit has a real shot here, and so I'm going to pick them for the fun of it, and because I think it can actually happen.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. It's like this. The postseason is where this stuff happens, which is why, like I said, I don't think that what you're saying is crazy at all. One of the worries that I have about the Tigers a little bit is who's going to carry them offensively. Like, I think everybody kind of likes Riley Green, but is he really going to be the guy that carry? Is he's going to be the guy that's going to protect everybody else in the order to to actually help them produce offensively? The Tigers, despite their late success, is still, among the bottom third or bottom sixth of teams in Major League Baseball in almost every offensive category. They don't win games by scoring runs. They win games by pitching and defense. So, we'll see how this goes. But all right, Dalton has the Tigers. I've got the Astros. Let's move on to the other American League wildcard series, the Kansas City Royals and the Baltimore Orioles. In Baltimore, the Royals jumped the Tigers kind of in the last second in the American League seeding. This is a team that, like Dalton said before, has kind of sputtered towards the end of the year a little bit more recently. Baltimore is one of these teams that came out of the door pretty hot, and then for the last few months just really hasn't looked like the same team. They're both young. They're both hungry. They're both a little raw, but I think people had much higher expectations on the Orioles than they did with the Royals this year. So, Dalton, what do you make of this playoff series between the Royals and Baltimore?
Well, it's almost a mirror image of the Detroit-Houston series in one sense, which is Baltimore, believe it or not, I think is playing a little bit of the Detroit role here, where they've got their, borderline Cy Young caliber starting pitcher in Corbin Burns pitching in game one. And if they don't win behind Corbin Burns, I think that's when things can get really hairy for Baltimore. Because if you don't win behind Burns, the Royals have two very solid starters set up right after him, right? They've got Seth Lugo, who's been excellent this season, and Michael Wacha, who's been solid. Whereas Baltimore, after Burns, is kind of a mess in the rotation. There's no real solid answers there, which is something we talked about back around the deadline. Baltimore didn't do enough to address their pitching situation at all. So, I think Baltimore's much more ripe for the upset than Houston here. I do wonder how Kansas City will react in this type of moment. This is a Royals team that, as it's gotten real for them down the stretch, they've started to struggle. They haven't quite looked ready for the bright lights all the time, and it's a really young ball club. So I think Baltimore, because they've suffered some losses in series that they were supposed to win in recent years, I think they're going to come into this series really focused. I think they're going to have a hell of a home crowd behind them, obviously, in Baltimore the next couple nights.
Yeah.
And the other reason that I like Baltimore in this series is what they did to Cole Reagans the second time they faced him this season. So Baltimore faced Reagans in the very beginning of the year. They faced him April 3rd at Camden Yards. He went 6 1/3, 1 hit, no earned, completely dominant. They faced him again 3 weeks later on April 20th. He didn't get out of the second inning, gave up seven runs, 9 hits. This is a Baltimore team that I think is the better of the two teams offensively. And I think the Royals are I said it before the season, and I still kind of feel this way. I think they're a year away. And I don't mean to throw water on them making the postseason and throw water on the awesome season that they've had. Yeah. But I think they're a year away. I think they're a little bit like what Baltimore was the last couple years. It's not that I don't think they can win this series. Neither team is particularly hot. But I think Baltimore finds a way to win this series. And I think it starts with Burns in game one against a very inexperienced postseason pitcher in Cole Reagans.
Yeah. It may sound kind of crazy, but I actually feel a little better about Detroit than I do about Baltimore or Kansas City at this very moment, right?
Sure, they're playing better baseball. Yeah,
they're certainly playing better baseball. But the thing that worries me about the Orioles really is if they're going to get enough pitching, like you said, outside of Corbin Burns, right? I mean, who are they rolling with in game 2 and game 3? I'd imagine one of those 2 games is going to be Zach Eflin. I'd imagine the other one is going to be, I don't know, Dean Kramer. Like, is that really kind of what we're going with? So I don't know. I think Baltimore did, really tried to improve their bullpen for situations like this. They got rid of Craig Kimbrell, right? Because he just simply wasn't working out for them. And Baltimore, I think, is one of those teams that, like, despite their struggles over the summer and towards the end of the season, I mean, you look at where they rank among Major League Baseball teams, right? They're 4th in runs scored, 7th in hits, 7th in batting average. They're 3rd in slugging. They're 4th in OPS, right? Like, they're still hitting at a fairly high level over there in Baltimore. So that's something that you got to keep an eye on. The issue that I have, like I said, is with their pitching and if they can get enough pitching from their guys outside of Corbin Burns. So I think it's interesting that you say that. I agree with you in the sense that Kansas City is just simply not ready yet. They are, like, Kansas City makes it interesting because I think Kansas City's pitching staff I can trust a little bit more than Baltimore's right now, right? Whether it's Cole, right? You're going to get Cole Reagans, you're going to get Seth Lugo. Who you get in a game 3, I don't really know, whether it's Michael Waka or Michael Lorenzen or Brady Singer or whoever you get in that game 3. But I think all are fairly, like, decent options in that spot, right? So I think Kansas City makes it interesting. I think this could go all 3 games. So, but I will take Baltimore. And it pains me to say it because as a Yankee fan, I would much rather play Kansas City than I would like to play Baltimore. Baltimore has kind of played the Yankees really well this season. So, but I will take Baltimore in the series. So we're both on Baltimore in that series. So what do we have? I've got Yankees, Orioles. You have Yankees, Orioles. I've got Cleveland and Houston, and you have Cleveland and Detroit. So we'll bounce back to that in a minute. So let's go to the National League side. The New York Mets and the Milwaukee Brewers. The Mets have struggled against the Brewers this year. They started the season against the Brewers. They almost finished the season against the Brewers. It'll be in Milwaukee. Listen, it's it's an enviable spot, I think, like you were saying, for the Phillies to be in to take the winner of this series. But what do you think, Dalton? Milwaukee and the Mets in Milwaukee.
It's a funny one because the Mets are in theory the team carrying the momentum. They're the team that I think up until September, really, not very many people actually believed that the Mets were going to take a playoff spot, right? So in that sense, I think they're riding the momentum of, all these narratives around their season with the Grimace stuff and, the OMG with Iglesias and everything else. Like, I think the Mets have this feeling of a team that people are like, oh, like they're kind of a team of destiny. They're going to make a run. Like, they're finding a way late in games. And they are. The Mets have that it factor right now a little bit. I kind of think that this is a tough matchup for them, though. This is a Brewers team that, like, for whatever reason, has kind of owned the Mets. They took 2 out of 3 from the Mets this weekend, right there in Milwaukee where the Mets just were. So I think part of the problem as well is the Mets are going to roll Sean Manaea out there in a big spot. Well, Sean Manaea just got touched by the Brewers in his last start. Like, this is a Brewers lineup that clearly sees him well. They just crushed him.
Yeah.
This is a Brewers team that also just hit Jose Quintana in Milwaukee a couple days ago. I don't think that means that, like, the Mets are out of it or that the Brewers can't all of a sudden go silent offensively, but the Brewers, and you're going to hear me talk about this a little bit once we get into Cleveland a little bit more. I think the Brewers are kind of that team that nobody's talking about that, like, should probably be a little bit of a bigger favorite in this spot than I feel like they are in the minds of most baseball fans. Neither team has pitching that they're all that confident in the rotation.
Yep.
But I think Milwaukee playing at home is going to have a chip on their shoulder. They've already shown an ability for whatever reason to beat up on this Mets team this year.
Yeah.
And Edwin Diaz threw, I think, more than 40 pitches today. Edwin Diaz is not pitching tomorrow. At least he shouldn't be, right?
No, he won't be.
So Edwin Diaz is not pitching in game 1 of that series. And Milwaukee has a monstrous bullpen, at least at the back end.
Yeah.
Right. So if whoever goes from Milwaukee tomorrow, I'm guessing Peralta, if Peralta can just keep Milwaukee in that game, which he's pretty damn good at doing,
yep.
I think Milwaukee should be a rightful favorite over the Mets. Now, do the Mets have some kind of mojo that might just rear its head and carry them a little while? It's possible. But I'm not buying into all the narratives with the Mets. I'm picking against them here with Milwaukee. Milwaukee is like the unsexiest team in the whole playoff field.
They are.
I don't think Milwaukee is going to do great once they have to travel into that zoo in Philadelphia, but I think Milwaukee is going to handle the Mets, and it might happen in 2 games.
Yeah, I applaud you. I really do. I applaud you for making this series sound like it's going to be competitive. Like, I really, really applaud you for that. I think the Brewers are going to roll them. I do. I think the Brewers are going to roll them. I just think, like, what you said about, like, almost not giving the Brewers enough credit, right? Like, they're not looked at as a favorite, right? Everybody looks at the Padres and the Dodgers and the Phillies, like, for sure, as bigger favorites than the Brewers are. The Brewers are a very balanced baseball team. Like, they don't, like, this is not a team that struggles that much offensively. This is not a team that struggles all that much in the pitching department. Like, they know how to score runs. They know how to prevent runs. So that's something that I think should be taken into account. Now, again, like, if you look at their roster, and we've said this all year, like, nothing about this roster impresses me at all, right? Their rotation going into a playoff series is going to be Freddie Peralta, Aaron Savale, and Frankie Montas. Like, I don't think that anybody is going to be, like, super intimidated by that, but, like, I don't, like, it doesn't seem to matter. I think the Mets' magic is just going to run out. I do. I think it's going to run out, and they burned a lot of resources. It does not help that they had to play today. Like, I really like 2 games today. It does not help that they had to play 2 games today. I think they're going to be gassed for tomorrow against Milwaukee. They're going to throw Luis Severino in game 1. I've seen the ups and downs of Luis Severino. So it's going to be something to see. I'd imagine that their next combination is going to be Manaea, Quintana, David Peterson. It's going to be among that group of guys, all left-handed starters, by the way. But I don't know. I look at this series. I don't know that it's lopsided, but I think the Brewers are going to take care of business. I don't know that the Mets have the juice against the Brewers. That it clearly showed over the course of the season. I think Milwaukee's going to roll them. I do. I think it's going to be. You're going to look at a game where it's like 7-1 and 6-1. Like those are the kind of games I think you're going to get in that series. I'm picking Milwaukee big time.
You're a bit more bold on Milwaukee than I am.
I am. And Milwaukee doesn't impress me, but I don't know. I think the track record speaks for itself. I will bank on the Mets shitting themselves, more than anything else. I just will.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I'll say is if the Mets are going to go uber left-handed, which it seems like they might after several. Yeah. Brewers are only 99 WRC plus against lefties for the year. Basically average to slightly below average offensively against lefties. Maybe it just doesn't work out for them. Then again, they just did hit these Mets lefties this week. So,
like crush. Yeah, right.
There's a reason we're both on Milwaukee. I'm just trying to make a little bit of an argument the other way.
It's like I said, I applaud you, man. I really do.
And I'll say this as far as the Mets travel schedule too, like Milwaukee to Atlanta is not some long flight, but you just had to play 3 games in Milwaukee. You didn't even get a chance to go home. You just flew straight down to Atlanta, played 2 games in one day, and then flew back to Milwaukee to go check into the same hotel. It feels like kind of a weird whirlwindy spot for the Mets where it's like, man, are they really ready to face a playoff crowd in Milwaukee tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be something else. All right, last wild card series, the Atlanta Braves and the San Diego Padres in San Diego. The Padres have been one of the hottest teams in baseball over the last 2 months. What are they, like 45-15 in their last 60 games? Like some ridiculous shit like that. But the Padres and Braves, the Braves are beat up, but they split today against the Mets, so they earned themselves a spot into the postseason. And Dalton, I think this actually comes as maybe a little bit of a surprise, because I think it was last week that we predicted that the Arizona Diamondbacks were going to take a spot from either the Mets or the Braves. The Diamondbacks end up getting shafted on this one. They don't get into the postseason, almost completely out of their control after what happened today. But the Atlanta Braves and the San Diego Padres in this series, what do we like?
I think the Padre, I feel about this series the way you feel about the Mets and the Brewers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see this series going 3 games. I think Atlanta's out of gas. Atlanta's traveling a lot further than the Mets after playing 2 games. Atlanta used their best relievers in game 1 of the doubleheader today.
Yep.
Didn't get it done. And then in game 2 had to go back to Iglesias again and found a way to get a playoff spot. I just think for Atlanta, this team kind of blew their load. I think it's over. You're not going to go into San Diego in front of a raucous crowd at Petco and beat Michael King and beat Dylan Cease. It's just not going to happen. And look, I said it off the top, right? In baseball, anything can happen. It absolutely can, right? Maybe Michael King comes out tomorrow, can't find the strike zone. The Braves put up a 5 spot in the first inning, and all of a sudden shit starts to get tight and tense in San Diego. That could totally happen. I'm never ruling that out. It's baseball. But man, this looks like a cakewalk for San Diego. This Atlanta team's beat up, and they just had the last strike across their bow with Chris Sale going out. I suspected a little bit of gamesmanship today with this Chris Sale injury, thinking, hey, maybe Atlanta is just going to try to sneak past the Mets in game 2, saving Chris Sale for San Diego. After the game, that question was asked, and the answer was, no, that's not what's happening here. In the fact that Reynaldo Lopez pitched an inning today. This is just not a fresh team at all. This is not a team that stacks up to the Padres at all right now. So I think the Padres win both games comfortably. I think the reason the Padres are going with Michael King in game 1 is because they are going to try to save Michael. I think they're going to try to save Dylan Cease for Saturday in LA. If they can. I don't know that yet, but I have a feeling that they might try to do that. They might try to go King, Musgrove, save Cease for Saturday, and then go Cease, King, Musgrove against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I'll get into the Dodgers-Padres series once we get there too, but I don't feel good as a Dodger fan about any of this. I think San Diego is going to roll the Braves.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I kind of feel similarly to this that you do. I think the NL wildcard series are going to be pretty chalk. I think it's going to be pretty simple to kind of break down. Kevin Acey, the Padres beat writer for the San Diego Union Tribune, posted an hour ago that the Padres starters for the wild card series are going to be Michael King in game 1, Joe Musgrove game 2, Dylan Cease game 3. So I think your theory is right. I think they are going to try and save Dylan Cease for game 1 in LA. Now the question becomes, does that change if the Padres lose game 1? If the Padres lose game 1, are they going to say, you know what, we have more confidence in Dylan Cease than Joe Musgrove at this point? So apparently what Mike Schilt said in regards to this was just quote, we picked them out of a hat. He was joking, but he was more saying this rotation is pretty interchangeable. We feel confidently in all these starters in the same spot. So it's, I think it'll be interesting to see what they do, especially if they lose in game 1, but I don't think they will. I think this is going to be a 2-game set. I think the Padres are too hot. The Braves are going to be, like you said, gassed. This is just, I think this could be a very lopsided series. Darvish is going to come out of the bullpen for the Padres in this series. I think that's an asset to have. Like look, I really think the Padres are going to be dangerous in the postseason, especially with that bullpen. I think they're going to take care of the Braves, no doubt. And the Braves at this point, like, they just don't impress me. They're so banged up. They're like the Tigers. They're happy to be here.
And it's weird to say that about Atlanta, given what the expectations were. But I mean, like, Austin Riley's gone, Acuna's gone. I mean, you can go on and on. Strider's gone. Like, I mean, look, the Braves.
Who's pitching game 1 for the Braves? Right? They just scratched Chris Sale today. So who's pitching game 1? Like, they don't even know.
Bryce Elder?
Yeah, right. I think the Braves are, like, they did, like, kudos to them for making the playoffs despite all of their injuries and all of their setbacks.
Yeah.
But I think they're toast.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to map out what the Braves winning that series looks like, it's like Michael King blows up in game 1.
Yeah.
And then Max Fried pitches Max Fried throws a gem in game 2 or game 3. I don't think both of those things are going to happen. I think one of them might happen. I don't think both are going to happen. Yep. I don't give the Braves much of a chance here. I would love to see the Braves push the Padres. Like, as a Dodger fan, best case scenario is that they push this series long and ton of pitching's used. But, and it brings me back actually to one more point I want to make, which is I don't think there should be a day off between the wild card series and the division series. Like,
it's interesting
because I think that winning your division, like, I think that right now getting that bye, it ought to be a bigger advantage than it is. To me, one way that MLB could do that and allow themselves more scheduling flexibility in the future so they don't have to do this crazy doubleheader and panic about what happened if it rained today in Atlanta. I think what MLB should do is start the wild card series Wednesday and have the wild card series go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Division series starts Saturday. That way, if you're a wild card team, like, you're going to pay for it with a little bit of a pitching disadvantage in the division series, which I think you should. Like, it incentivizes more finishing at the top. Because right now, even if the Padres go crazy with their bullpen, they get a full day off on Friday. And it's not like they're hopping on a plane. Like, they're just going up to LA. So, I mean, the Padres have about as good of a wild card draw as you can get.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, but that's kind of under special circumstances, though, right? Like, we weren't supposed to have any baseball today, but
no, but it's not shocking, right? Like, there are a lot of circumstances under which that can happen. You get game 163s if teams are tied. Rainouts can happen in the last week. Like, I don't think it takes crazy circumstances for that to happen. Of course, this year's circumstances were nuts, but I think in general, like, it makes more sense to delay the wild card series another day. I think pushing it against the NLDS would have been the right way to go.
Yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I don't think that you're wrong on that. Okay. So let's advance to the ALDS. We go. Dalton, let's, so we kind of have to go separately here now, but the ALDS, you now have the Detroit Tigers taking down the Houston Astros in the wild card round. They now go to Cleveland to play the ALDS with 3 games set to be in Cleveland, Ohio. The Guardians and Tigers, 2 AL Central opponents. How do you feel about that series?
I mean, I think Cleveland, a little bit the way I feel about Milwaukee. Cleveland is a problem with their bullpen. Like, I really think they are. And part of it is that Emmanuel Clase, what he's doing this season, he might be the best closer of all time right now. Like, I don't think that, seriously, at this point, I don't think that that's an absurd thing to say. He finished the season with an ERA of 0.6. Like, Cleveland is more than any other team in baseball. Cleveland is playing an 8-inning game. And if you look at the other pitchers in their pen, and these are no-name guys, right? I mean, we're talking about like Hunter Gaddis, Eli Morgan, right? Like, some of these names in their bullpen, it's so classic Cleveland, but these are guys who are just not getting touched. And I think Cleveland is a really scary team for anybody because they're scrappy, right? I mean, this is a team that against left-handed pitching, WRC plus 8th in baseball. You look at that against right-handed pitching, WRC plus about average. But the way they run the bases, the way they hit for contact, I think that they're like kind of built to win in the postseason a little bit. The rotation's not great, but to me, when you have a bullpen that can shorten a game to 6 innings, maybe even 5 innings, all they're going to need to do is just pitch well enough and grab a few runs, and they can put a scare into anybody. So I don't think I don't think Detroit goes into Cleveland and wins. If that ends up being the series, I would have to go with the Guardians there. Obviously, Detroit would be more than happy with the season that they've had if that happens.
Yeah.
I do think that if the Astros advance past Detroit, that the Astros will advance past the Guardians, because I think the Astros are more dangerous the longer a series gets, because the Astros have better depth to their starting pitching than they do like short series punch to their starting pitching. So I'll say that, like, if the Astros advance to play Cleveland, I like the Astros. If Detroit advances to play Cleveland, I like Cleveland. For the sake of the brackets that we're building, I'll take Cleveland over Detroit.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. For my matchup right now is Astros Cleveland, and I feel the same way you do. I think that Cleveland would probably beat Detroit, and I think Houston would beat Cleveland in those scenarios. You brought up the rotation for Cleveland. I would go ahead and say that it's bad. I think they are very susceptible for like, what the fuck are we gonna do now? Because you're rolling Tanner Bybee, right? You're gonna roll Tanner Bybee. You're probably gonna roll Matthew Boyd, and you're probably gonna roll Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb and Matthew Boyd have 11 starts combined on the season. Like, this could and Matthew Boyd and Alex Cobb have been around the league for a long time, but like, this is a rotation that seems like they scrapped together a bunch of pieces that they could find in preparation for the postseason. Like, this doesn't feel all that solid. Now, you bring up a very good point. Emmanuel Clase has been sensational this year, right? I looked up his ERA. It's 0.61. Like, it's actually dumb. So you're right. They are shortening games. It is an 8-inning game. It might even be a 7-inning game. But and Clase could be used in a lot of scenarios in multiple inning circumstances. He could be asked to get 6 outs in several games. But I think Houston, like I said, it sounds kind of lame when I say it like this, but I've just kind of seen it too many times. You know, like I just feel like the guys I trust in the postseason are not necessarily Stephen Kwan and Josh Naylor. Like, the guys I trust in the postseason are Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker. Like, I trust those guys more than I do, like, you know, John Kensey Noel. Like, the Guardians are like an interesting team to root for, because Dalton Brown at the beginning of the year said, quote, their ass. So it's been fun to kind of watch them play well, but truth be told, I just think, I don't know that this team's good enough. I look at them, I look at their starting rotation. I don't think is any good. Like, I think that their lineup is going to sputter, you know, and like, they're going to put up a decent, like, they might take a game or two or something like that, but I don't see them beating Houston if that comes the scenario. Now, again, if they play Detroit, I think Detroit, you know, they'll eventually flame out. If they get to the ALDS, I think they'll eventually flame out, and Cleveland will just take advantage. But if it's Houston, I think Houston takes them, likely in like 4 games.
Yeah, it's hard for me to disagree. Like, in terms of just like I think that's part of why I like Houston if they advance past Detroit.
Yeah,
is that, like, that shows, okay, the playoff mojo is still there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And
100% right.
like once you see, okay, Houston's playoff mojo is still there, like at that point, it's hard to take anybody over Houston. Like that's just how they are in the postseason. And you talked about it, right? The experience top to bottom with them. Yordan Alvarez's injury is worth watching. I don't know if news came out about this today yet, and I might have missed it, but he's like legitimately questionable to be able to play.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
That's
That would
a
be
big deal.
really
That's a
huge.
very big deal. You're right.
So we'll see about that. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to disagree with you there. Let's talk some Yankees O's.
Yeah, Yankees O's. Let's go into this. The Baltimore Orioles. You and I both have this with Baltimore taking down Kansas City in the wild card round. Yankee Stadium becomes the new hosting ground for 3 out of the 5 games in the ALDS between the Orioles and Yankees. They've seen each other plenty over the course of the season. The Orioles seem to have gotten the best of the Yankees for the majority of the time. Dalton, how do you feel about O's Yanks in the ALDS?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of those series where the Yankees are just a little bit better everywhere. Like, I think the Yankees have the better rotation. The Yankees have the better bullpen. The Yankees have the better lineup. Now, I will say this. The Yankees have a little bit of Dodgers to them. And what I mean by that is, like, last year, what happened to the Dodgers is Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman in their playoff series just went cold. I mean, that wasn't all that happened to the Dodgers. Like, there was more to it than that. Our pitching was horrendous. But, like, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman went cold at the same time. If Juan Soto and Aaron Judge go cold for a few days, that's it. Like, that's it. Like, they have to be good basically almost every night, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's a little bit of variance for the Yankees in that sense that, like, if their top 2 guys go cold, like, I don't know that they can survive that. But I just don't think the Orioles have enough pitching to get through 9 innings against the Yankees 3 different times in 5 games. Like, it's really hard for me to see that happening. Like, I think you're going to get Garrett Cole in game 1 against probably not Corbin Burns.
Yeah.
And then you'll probably see Burns in game 2 or game 3. But, like, I mean, outside of Corbin Burns, who's a pitcher that you're confident can hold the Yankees down at all?
Right.
And even Corbin Burns, Corbin Burns is good, but Corbin Burns, like, I've watched the Dodgers own him for years. Like, there are certain good lineups that can get to Corbin Burns. Like, he's not one, like Tarek Skubal is one of those starters that seems matchup proof, right? Like, Clayton Kershaw in his prime, matchup proof. Corbin Burns is not matchup proof.
No.
Like, he does get hit sometimes. And so it's like, you know, Cleveland doesn't have the starting pitching at all, but they have the bullpen. Baltimore doesn't have the starting pitching or the bullpen.
Yeah.
So I just don't know how they get enough outs in that series at all.
Yeah. I think you're onto something there. Definitely. I would pick the Yankees to win the series too. Something to point out. The Orioles most likely in this series will be throwing all right-handed pitchers against the Yankees. The Yankees are obviously much better against right-handed pitching than they are against left-handed pitching. That is well documented. And you bring up how Corbin Burns is not matchup proof, right? The Yankees, I think Garrett Cole's going to shove. I think regardless of he's a big game pitcher. Garrett Cole's going to shove. Corbin Burns, I'm sure, is probably going to pitch well. But, like, Luis Gil on any given night can go toe-to-toe with Corbin Burns, right? Like, Carlos Rodon, I mean, despite the up and downs, right? Carlos Rodon has had, like, 4 bad starts all year, like legit 4 bad starts that have really inflated his numbers. The other 25 have been pretty darn good. Like, I feel pretty good about the Yankee rotation. And I think as far as the lineup is concerned, the way that the Yankees have been losing games lately has been more of like we're trying to get through the last bit of the season, right? That their pitching has not been all that stellar. Pittsburgh, I think, had the best offensive series of the year against the Yankees this past week. So, like, okay, like, whatever. It doesn't really bother me all that much. The Yankees are still kind of knocking the cover off the ball. Like, they're still hitting the ball really, really well. So I'm with you. I think it's a scary matchup for me. The Orioles are 8-5 against the Yankees this year. So it does kind of give me a little bit of like, it's not who I want to see, but I have more confidence in the Yankees than the Orioles, especially with how the Orioles have been playing over, the past couple of months. So Orioles and I'm sorry, Yankees and Astros again in the ALCS for me. We'll see how we feel about that. It's Yankees Guardians for you. Okay, so let's go to the National League. We're running long, but it's whatever. It's playoff time. Brewers, Phillies in the NLDS on the other side of the bracket. Dalton, who do you feel like?
Yeah, I don't see a great path for Milwaukee or the Mets to go into Philadelphia and win. Philadelphia is a team that we've seen just be pretty tough to beat at Citizens Bank Park in the postseason. Yeah. I think if a team's going to go in there and do it, it's going to be like a Dodgers or a Padres. I don't think it's going to be a Brewers or a Mets. To me, this is a lot more straightforward than the AL series were. And part of it's because the NL has a few teams that have been dominant and a few teams that have been shaky. Just imagine you're lining up Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, Christopher Sanchez, right, against Freddie Peralta, Tobias Myers, Frankie Montas. The Phillies are going to be a heavy favorite in each game individually. You add in the fact that they're going to be getting the first couple games at home. I just don't see it for Milwaukee going into Philadelphia. You never know, right? You never know with these teams getting the layoff with the bye week and everything. And we've certainly seen that hurt teams from a momentum perspective. So that goes for any of these matchups. That road team could just come in red hot. That can be a problem really quickly for a team. But yep. I think the reality of what probably happens in that series is by Sunday night, Milwaukee's down 0-2 in Philly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel too. We've seen over the last couple of years how Philly gets during the postseason. That's a really tough place to play. It's a really tough place to play. And the Brewers, for all intents and purposes, are a pretty inexperienced roster. This is a team that has not really seen a whole lot of playoff action. Obviously, there's no Yelich. There's nobody to put them on their back. Rhys Hoskins might have a tremendous series in Philly because he's used to it. But I agree. I don't think that there's much of a path forward. I think the Phillies probably win this one in 4 games. Milwaukee will steal game 3 or something like that in Milwaukee. But I think that's virtually it. I think the pitching is better in Philly. I trust the lineup in Philly more. They've been together. This is kind of a group that have been in a lot of playoff games together. So I think they're just kind of waiting to explode. So I would take the Phillies as well. All right, we go down to the other matchup, the San Diego Padres. You and I both had this one as well. San Diego Padres and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Chavez Ravine being the hosting grounds for 3 of those 5 games. Dalton, Dodgers, Padres.
It really just makes me sick thinking about it, Mike. And it's, am I overly negative about the Dodgers in the postseason? Maybe, but you got to understand, man, we're talking about close to 15 years now of just playoff disappointment every single October. From when I was in high school, I'm 32 years old. From when I was in high school until now, I've been watching this team make the postseason every year. And outside of the 1 year that was COVID when fans couldn't be there, and I'm not going to go through my whole thing on that, but outside of that year, I've watched the Dodgers enter the postseason with high expectations every single year and disappoint me. So pardon me if I'm not overly optimistic about the Dodgers. I've seen this movie too many times. I have too much scar tissue to be enthusiastically excited. That being said, let's talk about the series itself. the positives for the Dodgers are that the Dodgers got to Dylan Cease relatively well this last week. The Dodgers overall this season have hit Michael King pretty well. The Dodgers did not really get to Joe Musgrove until late in that series, but Walker Buehler carried him in that game.
Yep.
So we just saw the pitching matchups that we're going to see. We just saw, and the Dodgers took 2 out of 3 in LA, and we hit their bullpen. So, like, that made me a little bit more positive about this series than I might have been. That being said, here's what's going to happen, okay? The Padres are going to swagger into Dodger Stadium confidently, boisterously, and loudly. They're going to take an early lead. Nerves are going to get high in the stadium. You're going to feel like – because the problem with Dodger Stadium right now, Dodger Stadium is a really underrated postseason environment. Like, people from the East Coast don't realize how loud Dodger Stadium gets when it's loud. The problem with Dodger Stadium right now is the existential dread that, like, sits in the air among Dodger fans. Because, like, if we go down 2-0 in game 1, everybody's sitting there and looking at their husband or wife or their kids or their brother or their sister or their friend and saying, oh boy, I know this feeling. I know this feeling. And all of a sudden you get into the 6th and the 7th and the 8th, and you see guys swinging at the first pitch and ground popping out. And I'm telling you, Mike, there's a despair in the air when these Dodger games get into the late innings in the postseason. There's this, we know what's coming in the air. It's really bad. So, like, I'll put it this way. The Dodgers are going to have to fight that demon head on. Like, Ohtani's going to have to keep doing what he's doing. Freeman and Mookie cannot give us another disappearing act like we've seen the last 2 postseasons. It just can't happen. Like, those 2 guys are going to have to hit when it matters. Like, Max Muncy's going to have to hit when it matters. Teo, I believe, will. But, like, we're going to have to put the ball in play. Like, this can't be all homers or strikeouts. You're going to have to put the ball in play. You're going to have to play intelligent baseball. You're going to have to not shit your pants. And that's a serious problem for this organization from a cultural perspective. I think the Dodgers, from a cultural perspective, tighten up and let the game speed up on them when shit gets serious. So we'll see. The Padres are the opposite of that. And they're going to come in there and they're going to be up on the dugout railing. They're going to be yelling. They're going to be loud. They're going to be emotional. You can either big league it and be like, well, just another game to us, and lose because you're not matching their intensity, or you can match their intensity, shake the nerves, and go beat somebody because you're just as, like, your lineup is insane. Like, go hit the shit out of the ball and win. But I'm picking the Padres. I'm picking the Padres in a sweep.
In a sweep?
In a sweep.
Whoa.
Yep.
In a sweep, you said?
Yep.
Wow. That kind of knocked my socks off. I anticipated you to take the Padres, but a sweep is something.
A sweep.
Wow. Okay. Well, I will say your speech was invigorating. I think that if you were my manager, I would run through a wall for you, Dalton. I really would. Maybe they can find a uniform for you so you can step in for Dave Roberts for the postseason. But I so badly want to disagree with you. I really do. Because I've been like pumping up the Dodgers for a while now. I really have been. I've been just kind of saying, look, if they can get quality innings out of their starting pitchers, if they can, like, I just think that if there was ever a year for the Dodgers to have an excuse to not do well in the postseason, it's this year, right? Like, obviously Ohtani comes in and, like, he's the shoe-in for NL MVP. Yamamoto comes in, he starts to shove right before he gets hurt. Like obviously, like we're looking at a roster that is, I think, the best in baseball when healthy. But they're not. They're not healthy. And I think that's where you're going to lose it right there. Is the Padres are better equipped. I don't know that they're better, but I think they're better equipped to play in the postseason than the Dodgers are. I think their rotation right now is more reliable. I don't even know that I trust the Padres lineup more, but everything that you say about just like the air in the building in Los Angeles, that resonates with a franchise. Okay. Like maybe Shohei Ohtani is the spark that they needed to change all of that. I'm not going to put that past them or anything. But like I said, I think the Dodgers healthy are the best team in baseball. And I don't even think it's a question, but they're not healthy. So if there's ever an excuse for them to lose in the NLDS, it's right now. So I agree. I will pick the Padres, but I think it's going to be a 5-game series. Like I don't think the Dodgers are going to lay down in that series. I think they will make it tough, and I think the Padres will eke it out at the last moment.
Man, I look, it's just something for me where, and just to share a little bit about where this comes from, like
scar tissue. I get it.
I remember in 2018, I went to Game 4 of the World Series against the Red Sox, and you're going into that game down 2-1 in the series. You lost both at Fenway. Game 1 was very winnable, and you go into that Game 4, and you're like, man, like if we can find a way to win tonight. It's 2-2. The pitching matchups are in our direction the rest of the way. We're going to have momentum against a really good Red Sox team. You go up 4-0 on Eduardo Rodriguez. You knock him out of the game. You feel so great about it. And then Dave Roberts comes out and accidentally pulls Rich Hill from the game. Says after the game, I didn't mean to pull him out of the game. It was an accident. In a fucking World Series game when a guy's throwing a shutout.
How do you make that? How is that an accident?
Like literally, he's like, I didn't want Rich Hill to hand me the ball. He handed me the ball because he saw me coming out and he assumed he was getting pulled. Well, Dave, maybe don't take the fucking ball from him then, right? Like, but I remember I was at that game with a good friend of mine, and I remember leaving that game, and this is in 2018, and the conversation he and I were having was like, man, like this team just is doomed. Like this, we were talking about it then, where it's like this is a repetitive nightmare. Of like every year, like we're going to be the team to beat and we're going to get beat every year. And it felt that way 6 years ago. And I don't want to take away from like the joy that I felt in 2020 because there was real joy around that and it was amazing. It was a real World Series and that's all fine and good. But like you didn't have a parade. Like you didn't win it in your home ballpark or really in front of fans. Like we didn't get to fully enjoy that. And we also, like, as a fan base, didn't get any of like the pat on the back for it from the rest of baseball, right? The rest of baseball, as soon as that series was won, pretended as if they didn't care about their team all year. And we wanted in a meaningless season that they didn't care about, right? Like, right. And I get that, like, this is a very personal thing, but like, there's a certain dread that, like, that didn't take away.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about, for me at least, more than a decade of my hope dwindling slightly every year. Like every year I've been a little bit more doomsday-ish as I go into October. And every year I've been looking forward to October a little bit less and dreading it a little bit more. This year is the absolute peak of that so far.
Yeah.
And when we get swept by San Diego and then we win 98 games again next year, I'm going to feel the same way going into next October unless we change our manager.
There we go. I am boy, am I excited for next week. I just am. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Oh man. All right. Championship series time. Again, you and I, for the sake of this bracket, are a little bit different. We both have the Yankees in the ALCS, but we differ on the north side of that bracket. you have the Guardians and I have the Astros. So, Dalton, in your case, Yankees, Cleveland, who goes to the World Series?
So I think, just for the sake of being
Just lay it on me. It's okay.
just for the sake of being a little bit contrarian here, I'm going to go with Cleveland.
I love that.
For the sake of being a little contrarian, and just because I've shit on Cleveland all year, how
amazing is that?
I'm still not sure that the Cleveland Guardians are not ass. I want to make that clear. Like, that lineup doesn't scare me at all. That pitching rotation doesn't scare me at all. But there's something about and I'm not going to lie. Like, some of this is not. I'll put it this way: when I do sports betting content, I'm very numbers, logic, everything has to make sense and present value. This is a much more nebulous, feeling-based, emotional-based thing where when I went to that game in Cleveland earlier this year, there's a certain mojo in the air with that team right now that they know that if they've got you tight heading into the late innings of a game, they know they've got you by the balls. And I just think that that's a team that if they can eke out a couple runs against you, you're in trouble. And don't get me wrong, the Yankees are going to be favored over the Guardians in that series if it happens. The Yankees should be favored over the Guardians in that series if it happens. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Guardians are a better team than the Yankees, or that I would be surprised if the Yankees won that series. In fact, I think the Yankees do win that series 60 out of 100 times. I just have a weird feeling we're going to get one of the 40, and the Guardians are going to make it to the World Series.
Well, here's the thing. That obviously the reason I love this is because, like you said, you've pooped on them all year, and now you're picking them to go to the World Series. I think it's so great. But listen,
baseball, man.
It is. The Guardians, I don't think, are as good as they were in the years of 2016, 17, where those teams, but they do kind of feel similarly in the fact that they kind of beat you in the same way, right? Those Guardians teams, I guess they were the Indians at that point, but those Cleveland teams beat you late in games. They shortened the game to 6 innings, right? When it was Andrew Miller and it was Cody Allen, and it was those guys in the back of the bullpen. You weren't scoring runs. You weren't scoring runs on that back end of the bullpen. And Cleveland kind of has a similar feel. Emmanuel Clase is the best closer in baseball, right? Hunter Gaddis, Eli Morgan, Cade Smith, Tim Herron. These are they're locking down games, and they're nobodies. I've never heard of this, but before the season started, if I would have told you, okay, who's Tim Herron? Nobody fucking knows who Tim Herron is, but that's kind of that's the thing, is Cleveland does kind of have that feel of things start going their way, then watch out. But I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't pick the Yankees to lose in the ALCS to the lowly ass Cleveland Guardians. I can't do that. So what am I going to do? I think the Yankees are better. I just think the Yankees are better. I trust their rotation more. I think that, this is a Guardian team that, trust me, they've kind of proved everybody wrong, right? They're way better than what everybody thought they were. But I agree. I don't know that they're not ass. I think that come postseason time, are you really that confident that if Detroit beats the Astros, I think people have a pretty good feeling that no matter what happens in the O's-Royals series, the Yankees aren't getting swept, right? I think there's a chance that no matter who wins that series between Houston and Detroit, I think there's a world where we can live in that Cleveland gets swept in that series because the guy coming in is red hot. I just get that feeling. So I think I can't take the Guardians over the Yankees in that spot. Plus, postseason history, by the way, heavily skews the Yankees. Heavily.
Well, yeah, but every postseason category that doesn't include the Astros is going to favor the Yankees, right? I mean, that's just
But I mean head to head in recent history, head to head,
yeah.
Yankees have had the Guardians.
No, I get it. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but like the Yankees, if you want to play the history game with the Yankees, they're going to win every World Series.
They're going to win every game. You're right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, right, like you are more likely to be right than I am on the American League in general. I just think that the American League has a higher capacity for potential chaos.
Yeah.
And so knowing that you're going to pick the Astros and the Yankees, I want to present the chaos scenarios in the American League. Yes. I also think the way these 7-game series lay out 2-3-2 like is a little bit of a problem for the home teams. It's something else that I think Major League Baseball should change. I think these series should be 2-2, 1-1-1. But like I see a scenario, and I'll talk about the same thing in the National League, where let's say Cleveland goes in and takes one in New York and all of a sudden has momentum in a raucous building at home. Like that's tough. I think things could get tight on the Yankees all of a sudden, especially if that bullpen is shutting them down and Cleveland knows like, hey, if we can get 3 good innings out of Alex Cobb, 2 or 3 good innings out of Ben Lively, now we're just turning over to our dudes. Like if hey Yankees, if we can drag you into a 2-2 ball game into the 6th, we're the favorite, right? Like that's where I think things get a little hairy with Cleveland. But you're right that the Yankees are the favorite. I am very much playing devil's advocate here because I want to. Like if you were to put a gun to my head and say, hey, who's making the ALCS in the World Series? I'm saying Yankees, Astros, and from there, I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's 100% true. That also did remind me, I'm not picking the Yankees against the Guardians. I'm picking the Yankees against the Astros. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
So I'm curious, because we talk about scar tissue a lot with these postseasons, right? And how the Guardians have scar tissue with the Yankees. The Dodgers have scar tissue with the month of October. But if there's one team that the Yankees have a lot of scar tissue with, it's Houston. Why is this the year that changes? I want to hear it.
I think the Yankees are, well, first of all, I think the Yankees are better than the Astros this year. I think in previous years that hasn't been the case. I think the Yankees are better. I also think that over the course of the season, the Yankees have beaten the Astros. Like most of the time when these teams go against each other in the regular season, like we kind of get that over the past several years, the Astros have been like far and away the best team in the American League, and everybody else has been fighting for second. And we keep kind of, trying to find excuses to say that other teams are going to catch up to them when in reality they just can't, right? I don't find that to be the case this year. I think the Astros are A, beat up. B, I think that like they're really kind of nearing the end of this regime just kind of like taking over baseball, right? It's really nearing the end for them. We're not sure Alex Bregman's going to play for them next year. Like we're really kind of like nearing the end of this. I think their pitching is worse this year than it has been in previous years. Their bullpen is assuredly worse than it this year than it has been in previous years. Even despite adding Josh Hader, like it's worse. I just trust the Astros less than I do than they have been the years before. And truth be told, the Astros haven't faced the Yankees in the postseason when they've had Juan Soto and Aaron Judge in the same lineup. Like, I really think that makes like all the difference in the world. Like you had to, when the Yankees were playing the Astros, the previous several years, it was Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, and Giancarlo Stanton. Rizzo past his prime, Stanton past his prime, right? Judge having his struggles in the postseason. Like that's what you're facing. Now you're getting Juan Soto. Now you're getting Aaron Judge. Now you're getting Stanton with way less pressure to be the top tier contributor that he was forced to be in previous years. You're getting Jazz Chisholm in this lineup. Like, I just think that you're like, this is a better Yankee team. and it's a worse Astros team. If I can just simplify it that much, that's the reason.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. You know, the Astros are tough, right? Because the further they advance, the more inevitable they feel.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
you're right. Yeah.
So
The looming cloud is going to be there regardless
yeah,
of what happens. So that is something certainly to take into account also. You're right. So, boy. All right. NLCS. Padres, Phillies. We're both on the same sort of I wanted to pick the Dodgers so bad. I really, really did. Because I want a Yankees Dodgers World Series. Like that's what I really, really, really want.
I think both Yankees and Dodgers fans have wanted that for years and almost gotten it several times. And
I know.
So there's an appetite for it 100%.
Oh my God. What would this show be like, Dalton, with a Yankee Dodger World Series? Oh my God. But okay, San Diego Padres, Philadelphia Phillies in the NLCS. What do we like?
I like the Padres. I do. I think that the Padres can go toe to toe with the Phillies starting pitching.
Mm-hmm.
The Phillies bullpen has been really good, but I think San Diego's got the better bullpen. And this San Diego team just has a different confidence. Like this San Diego down the stretch has done what Detroit has done, except San Diego has legitimate World Series talent, whereas I don't think Detroit does yet.
Yeah.
Like you're taking Detroit level of like being hot going into the postseason and combining it with like arguably one of the top 3 or 4 most talented teams. And they're healthy compared to these other teams too. Like that's one thing about the Padres that like doesn't get talked about enough. Holy cow, are they healthy? Like it just doesn't happen very often that a team gets into the postseason with like this little missing. And the Phillies are the same way to a degree, but here's how I think these are the two teams who like their postseason environments are going to be a little bit wild at home. And I think San Diego has the mojo it takes to go into Philly and take one. And I think if they go into Philly and take one and they come home, I'm not sure that series gets back to Philadelphia. And
wow.
even if it does, San Diego, I just think San Diego's got this mojo to them right now that nobody else does. Like part of it with Philly too is I think Philly had that mojo going for them the first 3 months of the season when they were cruising. And I think they've been hit with a little bit of like what the Dodgers have been hit with in past seasons where like the game stopped mattering to them down the stretch.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a little bit of the juice leaked out. Whereas like San Diego was fighting all the way to the finish line. San Diego's every bit as talented as they are. I think this is the year San Diego advances to the World Series. So in my World Series, I've got the Cleveland Guardians and San Diego Padres.
Yeah. So a team that's ass and a team that's
a team that I despise.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. That's fantastic.
Yep.
So Phillies Padres. I think the Padres are a better baseball team today. They are. They are playing better baseball. The thing that is giving me pause is the Phillies have a way about this, right? Like they just seem to like they mesh with the environment better than any team I think in any other sport. Like the Phillies and Philadelphia and their fans and their stadium and the whole thing, it all comes together to like, I know it sounds really like cliche and stupid, but like it all comes together like a machine. It just does like it. You're playing against the city when you're playing the Phillies, not just the Phillies. So that plays a part in this too. I will take the Padres. And the reason I'm saying that is simply because the Phillies are kind of like the Orioles, right? Ever since the middle of the summer, they just haven't felt like the same baseball team. Now, again, I have a feeling that once the playoffs do come around, like it's going to unleash this entirely new beast in Philadelphia. I think this is a series that goes the distance. It has the makings of a series that will go the distance. But I do think the Padres get the better end of it. And I so badly, like I was so prepared to come onto the show and just be like, I don't know that because I always looked at the Padres as like they choke. Like this is a team that kind of chokes. I don't buy them choking this year. I think they're just too hot.
Yeah. No, we're in lockstep there. So you've got a Yankees Padres World Series. I've got a Guardians Padres World Series.
Yes. All right. So I think I know the answer to yours, but Guardians Padres and Dalton Brown's official World Series prediction. Who wins the World Series?
San Diego Padres. I bet them earlier this season and gave it out on the show at 30-1. I think the Padres are better built than any team in baseball for this postseason. I think they have the rotation to win it all. They have the bullpen to win it all. They have the lineup to win it all. I think San Diego's biggest challenge will come in the championship series against Philadelphia. I think the Yankees or Guardians or Astros, as much as I respect all three of them and think that they're all three capable of doing it, I think the Padres, if they get over that Philadelphia hump, will ride momentum to a World Series title over whoever comes out of the AL. Obviously Guardians, I don't have a ton of positive things to say about the Guardians roster beyond their bullpen. I just think they're a team with some mojo that could get there. I want to talk a little bit about Padres Yankees too, right? The Padres are a team that I think I give an edge to the Yankees. I give an edge to the Padres over the Yankees in the rotation. I give an edge to the Padres over the Yankees in the bullpen. And I think I give a little bit of an edge to the Padres over the Yankees in the lineup. I just think the Padres are the best built team to win the World Series this year. And I think it's shitty for the Dodgers that you have to run into that team that early in the postseason after finishing with the best record in baseball. But I just think that that's the reality. I think the Padres are built to win a World Series this year. I think that they have mastered the urgency that it takes to do it and the energy that it takes to do it. And I have a feeling they're going to do it this year.
Well, that is certainly well taken. It is certainly well taken, and I understand it completely. Because we said at the trade deadline about the Padres, they made some moves where we were just like, what the fuck are you doing? To the point of value-wise, it doesn't make sense. Rental bullpen arms. You're giving up top-tier prospects for rental bullpen arms. And boy, did they shove it up our ass like you wouldn't believe. They have really just kind of said well, fuck you two. You guys don't know anything, and we're just going to take over baseball because that's what they've done, right? No?
Well, so here's the thing, right? I think that bet only cashes for the Padres if they win the World Series. I'm not ready to say that they've won that bet yet because
well, certainly.
Because the decisions that they made this year, if they let's say the Padres flame out early, now you've decimated your farm system for rental arms. And I think question marks start to really arise moving forward for that organization if they don't win it this year. So I'm not ready to call that trade deadline an overwhelming smart success yet.
Oh, yeah.
But they've definitely set themselves up to where it can be.
Yeah, certainly. So here we go, Dalton. Yankees, Padres, World Series. Here we go, baby. It's time. It's time. It's our time, Dalton Brown. Here's the thing. Am I a little biased? Of course I am. We start the show talking about our own teams. I can't claim that I'm not biased when we do that every single show. So yeah, I'm a little biased towards the Yankees. Here's the thing though. I think the Yankees, as far as like matchups are concerned, like I don't know that I could pick a thing that I can confidently say like the Padres are definitively better at. I just don't. I don't know that I could pick a thing. The bullpen, I think, is the thing that you could point to as just like, okay, like you have an edge in the sense of like, if you have a lead, then yeah, the Padres are going to be able to lock down games. But I think the Yankee lineup can go toe-to-toe with the Padres. I think the Yankee rotation can go toe-to-toe with the Padres. I think that we're looking at an environment also when it comes to like Yankee Stadium versus San Diego. I would take Yankee Stadium a million times out of a million. That's how I feel. You don't think so?
No.
Old
Yankee Stadium, maybe.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. It's New York.
I'm just being honest with you.
It's New York versus the vacancy that is San Diego. There's no way.
I've been to both. I'm telling you, I disagree. I get it, right? I think Yankee Stadium, from an environment perspective, what it comes down to is like, does the other team crumble under the lore? Do they crumble under like the legends of it, right? In terms of like modern day environment intensity, dude, San Diego is pretty wild, man. It's pretty wild. Like I think San Diego is the closest thing to Philadelphia right now because, and part of it is that those fans, and I'm going to insult them while also complimenting them. Those fans in San Diego, because none of them cared about the team when they wore navy and white or navy and orange, because they're all new fans who didn't watch baseball until it was convenient to watch baseball because the Padres were good. They've never really known like actual pain. They've only known like we're the upstart underdog who's all of a sudden beating teams we're not supposed to. Like they, because they don't like that, like Dodger Stadium, if the Dodgers like earn it and play up to it, can be a crazy environment in its own. But Petco is a crazy environment right now because they don't know any better, if that makes sense. And I think old Yankee Stadium had a mystique to it. Man, I've been to several games at new Yankee Stadium now. It's nice, but the aura just isn't there for me, Mike. I got to be honest. Like, it feels like an airport. It feels corporate. It feels stale. It feels just kind of like the whole stadium looks like a billboard. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's shitty or that it doesn't have any aura, but I don't think it has old Yankee Stadium aura. I also disagree with you pretty vehemently on the rotations. Like, I think the Yankees rotation is solid. I think San Diego's rotation is better. Just my 2 cents. We'll see.
I think it's good. I think San Diego's rotation is very, very good. I do. I don't think that I would. Here's the thing: I would take Garrett Cole over all 3 San Diego starters.
Over Dylan Cease.
Yes, I would. Especially over like the last 12 starts that Garrett Cole has made, where his ERA is like 2.0. Like, I think Garrett Cole in a big game, I would trust him over Dylan Cease. Yeah, I would.
Well, to be fair, we haven't seen Dylan Cease pitch in these environments really yet because he's been with the White Sox, right? I mean, he's pitched 2.2 career innings on the postseason. You know, that being said, Dylan Cease last 15 starts, 2.58 ERA, 94 strikeouts. Like, I mean, he's been really the same, right? I mean, he's been that guy. So I can understand. Like, here's the thing, right? If you want to make an argument for Cole over Cease, I can listen to that argument. It's after those two where I would take the Padres in probably the next 3 pitching matchups.
Okay. I mean, look, I'm not gonna disagree to the point of like, oh well, Carlos Rodon's better than Michael King. Like, I'm not gonna be the guy that makes that argument. But Michael King used to be ours. We know Michael King. We will shit on Michael King if I can make my point clear. But again, yes, look, I'm biased towards the Yankees. I think the Padres are more than likely better built. But what am I going to do? I'm going to make my case.
Yeah, look, I love it, Mike. I love it, and I love the fact that, like, you know, you and I both wear our emotions on our sleeve about our teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it makes for great entertainment value. You picking the Yankees, I think it's the best possible scenario for the show. I would love to pick the Dodgers and like play the other side of that. I just can't do it. I think we're screwed. But like, hey, look, I'll tell you this much: if the Yankees win the World Series, like, I'll be very happy for you. I'd rather see the Yankees win it than the Mets. From a fan perspective, I'd rather see the Yankees win it than the Padres or Phillies. I just think it's the Padres here. We'll see.
Well, listen, it very well could be. So my World Series champ is the New York Yankees. Dalton Brown's World Series champ is the San Diego Padres. By the way, I had these queued up before the show even started.
Because you knew.
Because I knew. Actually, that's a lie. I queued them up in about like 5 minutes ago. But neither here nor there. But okay, this postseason bracket is what we will be paying attention to over the next couple of weeks as we conclude the Major League Baseball season. It should be a ton of fun. This is what we prepare for every single show. This is 24 episodes deep, by the way. It's been a long season. It hasn't felt long though. It seems like it's been pretty quick. But it's been a long season, and we'll see just how the postseason shakes out. Dalton, any closing words before we say goodbye?
No, I'm excited to get to watching it.
Yeah, see, there you go. By the way, of course, because I can't keep my focus for 1 minute, the Titans right now are beating the Dolphins 16-6, and the Lions are beating the Seahawks 21-7 on Monday Night Football. So after you leave us, feel free to go watch Monday Night Football, because that's what we're going to do. All right, that does it for us. Dalton Brown, Mike Guido. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network, the only exclusive baseball podcast on the Grid Network. Again, it's postseason time every Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Make sure you tune in for that. Watch a lot of postseason baseball. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll be back next week talking about it. We'll see you soon.